To start the presentation, I would like to introduce the office to you, for those of you who don't know it. We are an architecture company based in Amsterdam, founded in 1988 by Ben van Berkel and Caroline Bos. And since then, we steadily grew to the size that we are now. We have around 140 people in Amsterdam, and we have 2 offices in China, in Hong Kong and in Shanghai, with around a staff of 50. And what makes Unstudio quite special is that we have so many people from different countries and different backgrounds, and especially the office in Amsterdam is quite diverse. And we see that these different cultures and these different backgrounds really enhance our design work, and it comes back in everything that we are doing. So we are not strictly speaking airport planners, and most of you might know Unstudio from our cultural projects, and most notably the Mercedes-Benz Museum, which you see up here. But nevertheless, there always has been a keen interest in infrastructural projects in the office, and we always like the idea to take something that is considered more ordinary and turn it into something extraordinary. And by that, creating a sense of place and identity along an everyday journey, and by that also changing how you perceive a city. And this ranges from a transformer substation in the city of Innsbruck that was built like being a public sculpture, all the way to highway underpasses, then to bigger projects like the bridge in Rotterdam or railway stations that really change how you read a city and how a city identifies itself. In the following, I would like to look more closely into 4 projects, and would like to explain how we see user-centric design part of our work, and how we the methodologies we employ in Unstudio. The 4 projects are not only airports, so I want to widening up the discussion a bit into transport buildings, and I would like to talk about Arnhem Central Station, the Qatar Integrated Railway Project, the Taiwan Airport Terminal 3, and Kutaisi International Airport. So, designing a user-centric environment. We have seen similar images throughout the last days and the last talks, but it really confirms that we are onto something. And for us, this picture says that journeys and the act of traveling really used to be something very desirable, and especially air travel was something that you would aspire to. And the spaces built around this act of traveling really catered to this aspiration. They were very romantic, spectacular, and created memorable moments. Fast forward a couple of years, you're presented more and more with things like this. This is from one of my recent journeys. It feels, when I look at this image, that the act of traveling is really stripped down to its utilitarian core. And when I see this, I feel like there's a misalignment of priorities in the aviation industry. And this misalignment might very well come from the fact that different parties involved in airport planning and operating try to optimize and try to be very efficient in their own field, but maybe with looking too much what others are doing. Moreover, as we learned, there's an increase in passengers every year, and which really affects airport planning. There are factors like size, capacity, movement rates, security areas, concessions, and so on that change with that. Really with that peaking of passengers. So I know my numbers are not quite correct, but the graph might look like this. There's a really steep change of increase of passengers throughout the years, and it also affects how the airport typology changes over time. It went from something that is very small and compact and integrated to city-like areas, which are complex and very difficult to navigate. So I showed these romantic images in the beginning, but by no means we want to go back in time. For us, it's really that how can we scale up an experience that is shown on the left. Delighted people which might land somewhere on an island in Greece, coming off of the airplane and start their holiday right at the apron. How can you scale an experience that is so intimate and free to a scenario that you see on the right? And we really believe that the difference makes that we focus on user groups and start to develop our design from there. And we would really like to start changing to a process that is more bottom-up than top-down. And by that, put the human scale in the center. And we believe that by this, we would reach to a more social sustainable and a more environmental friendly way of traveling. So now, as mentioned, I would like to dive into these projects and talk a bit more about these. The first one is the Qatar metro lines, which are located in Doha, and it's currently under realization. And the design really tries to embrace local culture and the geographic context on a very large scale. The challenge in this project was really that we had to design each line and every station along each line at the same time. So this is around 100 stations, and they had to be done at once. So the question was really, how can you give identity and a unique sense of place to something that is growing so quickly? What we tried is avoid repetition and doing the same thing over and over again. The solution to this was for us to really structure the task into families of identities, meaning that each station gets looked at from 3 different levels. There's, of course, the location of the individual station itself in the city, which changes and it's unique everywhere. But then, how does this station relate to the line that it is situated in? So it's part of the red line, the blue line, and so forth. And the next level is, how do all of these stations make up a character that is unique for Doha and represents the metro line company? What we did is we started with creating an architectural language that really reaches across all these scales and acts as a backbone. And you see we borrowed from traditional Arabic architectural elements. You see these arching walls, but also we tried to react to the local environment by having these large cantilevering roofs, providing shade, and we have very massive roofs in order to keep the heat out. And what you see here is what we call a pop-up shelter next to a busy road, and it is really, you would enter there and then would go down to find your train. So by creating this language, we took very well care that we allow for enough flexibility and variation, so we can really cater to each unique situation that we might encounter within the city. What we did is we created these folded panels, you can see here. But by combining these panels, we can really build up different situations for underground stations, for shelters, for elevated stations. So this almost, let's say, geometric tool set allowed us to control scale, light, and what is very important, shading in this area, but also guide people. And this is the station you have seen before. When you enter, you would go down and would find your train. But then, while we were progressing at this project, we very soon realized that to make a journey very tangible, you need to go to a different scale. You need to go to areas that are closer to the user. So we started to really look at the surfaces that are very close to you and investigated in really an abundant use of materials that is very unusual for stations. So traditionally, you would have your bold colors all over. You would have your red line, your blue line, and this would go throughout all the lines and all the stations in the line. But we tried to flip this around and put materials in the foreground and work with the material properties and textures that you have naturally in these materials. So you see here, you still have your red, but then the red line is very much defined by the wood material. Or the yellow line, we use natural stone and cut it in a certain pattern. So by this, we really think that you can create a more friendly and more pleasing environment while you are traveling throughout the city. And to sum up this project, I really think this image is really about what we were after. We really think that architecture should act as a background to activities that can happen in the city and really create a sequence of spaces that allow you to experience the city along these spaces. The quest to create more than just another train station or a piece of infrastructure is really something that relates back to this project, which is the Arnhem Central Station. It was completed last year and was in the office for the last 20 years. So in many ways, this project acts for a model of how UN Studio works and also for a model of what a train station can be. It turned out to be an intermodal hub that is a catalyst for the city of Arnhem, but and also connects the city to the region of Gelderland, where it's situated in, and also to the wider geographic context. And just to explain what you see, you have the main hall here on the left with the bus gates. You have office program here in the middle with auxiliary program, and then here the train tracks and the roofs. This design came really about by the question, who is it for? So we put the user at the core, and really at the core of the consideration, and it really helped us to come up with something that is completely new. And it also confirmed that the station is heavily used, of course, for travelers, but there's a big amount of people that not necessarily use it for just stepping onto the train. So what we did is we took what you have in a station in abundance, movement and people walking around, and we tried to embrace this movement. And in the beginning, what we always do is we work with tools like this, where we start to map connections, try different scenarios, really find what is the fittest of these scenarios in order to minimize decision points, level changes, and so on. We take layouts and try to virtually simulate the journey you go along, try to negotiate between different destination points. But then in the end, we really see that architecture is then the guide that navigates between these movement patterns that we recognized in the step before. Here you see the architectural gesture of how you come up to the, I always press the wrong button, how you come up to the station, to the tracks. You have light coming down. So we are really after creating these beacons of orientation that confirm you along your way. And this is a view into the central hall. And when we look at it, we of course we like the form, but it's not only the form that we like. It is also a manifestation of the movement. And this form really comes about all these patterns. And we try to negotiate between these movement patterns. So you have this long arching ramp that goes down from level 1, connecting the platforms to the level 0, where you come with the buses and you walk in. And then it ramps down even further in a gentle motion to the parking garage, where you come with your car, or the bike parking facilities, which is a big thing in Netherlands. So there was a lot of doubt while realizing this project, but you can really see that it works when you see how people use it in an unexpected way, and they make it theirs by coming up with different ways of having fun in the space, and really make it personal along their journey. So now I'm getting into airports. The airport that we did, that is a realized project, is quite a small airport. But sometimes you have small projects, and in small projects you can see very well what the intention is. You can read really clearly what we are after. It has a small capacity, nevertheless there's a national and an international separation. Everything is organized on the same level, and I think this image talks for itself. we have arrival and departure on the same level, but what we are after is quite similar as what we did in Arnhem. We are after a model of movement. So we try to come from something that is very complex, but very inefficient and crossing, to something that is as simple as a roundabout. And again, we use tools. We always go back to a tool set. And one of these items in the tool set is called the deep planning approach. So we start with analyzing spatial requirements, mapping out connections, physical connections, visual connections, connections with light, green. I see I need to speed up. Try this analytic approach to discover underlying key factors. And in this case, the key driver that drove the organization of this building is the folding roof and the courtyard that really is at the center of the building and acts as a beacon of orientation. And departures and arrivals is oriented around that central space that lets light in and has a very strong imprint. And we really hope that by creating these moments that are that have this strong character, that you start to take this picture with you along your journey, and it starts to create a memorizable place. So I'm finishing up now with the project that we did recently. This was a competition entry for the Taiwan International Airport. It's an extension to two existing terminals, and it is a head house with a capacity of 45 million passengers per year. It can be processed in there. And our design got second after Rogers, but we took away very positive feedback, not only from the client, but also from the jury, and even the public was very in favor of this. And it confirmed us that we are something after that might be worth taking on. We try to break with an aperture topology that relies on an excessive and monotonous use of space, but try to really focus on the scale of the user. And how we want to do that is really, or how we did that is by adapting the building volume and changing the scale that is emotionally and functionally needed. And by that, coming away from a big hall, but to something that is more like a link of a chain of events. So you have different sort of experiential spheres that are linked together. And this is an example where the roof dips down. It's funneling natural daylight across the departure arrivals hall down into the MRT station, and it acts as a natural wayfinding beacon and connects all these different ways of all these different modalities. And as said, we were after a curated chain of memorable events. So when you pass through this building from departure to your gate, you go along these different spaces that we set up. It's almost like walking through Venice. You go through one piazza to the next, and hopefully you don't get as lost as in Venice. But it's the feeling that you have these very intimate spaces that you're going through. So for each link in this chain, we introduced soft building blocks, as we call them. And they comprise of green, of shopping and services, and culture and air. And we scaled these components to what we thought emotionally needed and also functionally needed. And this is how one of these zones looks like. You see that it is a very natural space. We thought of them to be very relaxing, a very controlled use of daylight, controlled humidity, very controlled temperature, everything that is close to the five senses. This is looking along the departure pier. And really what we're after is to make a journey more personal. And we've heard in previous talks that there is a lot of tech out there, and technology that is very close to you, and it's undeniably great in making your life easier, and you cannot do without. But moreover, we think if you have a well thought through architectural design, it really allows you to connect to the user and helps them to navigate through these spaces in a more natural way and moreover in an unaided way. Thank you.